Sina, thank you so much for being part of Designing the New Usual, Becoming Diverse.
Thanks for having me.
So could you start out by telling us what it is that you do?
So I'm Sina Fazelpour. I'm an assistant professor of philosophy and computer science at Northeastern University in Boston. And most of my research are in responsible and human-centered AI and philosophy of science and cognitive science. And I focus particularly on issues of justice, reliability, and diversity.
Yeah, and you have, as you mentioned, you have some ongoing research projects within this. Could you speak a little bit about the two you're working on right now related to diversity and inclusion?
One is more generally in the context of group diversity, and it's about the different ways in which diversity might benefit group performance or decision-making based on, and here I use both psychological literature and organizational literature and simulation-based studies. And the other research is about diversity, particularly in the context of human-centered machine learning.
What have been some of the takeaways you have found in your research when it comes on not only implementing, but also measuring diversity within companies?
One of the core takeaways that requires iterating all the time is that we need to be very careful about what we mean by diversity and why do we conceive of diversity in that way? Because it has widespread implications. So let me kind of elaborate on what I mean. Diversity, when we use it, it can be understood in very different ways. So we might mean by diversity something like balanced representation. And by this, we might motivate this type of notion by referring to egalitarian ideals, right? Equality and having different types of perspective in equal measure. But we can also mean something like proportionality and representativeness in the group. And here we might refer to ideals of representative democracy. Or we might mean something different. We might mean that we want our group to diverge from a homogeneous norm. Why does this matter? Well, these notions, as I said, they are grounded in different types of values and reasons. And each one of them might become relevant in different types of contexts. So imagine you're designing a product. In certain cases, you might think that, okay, I want to have a representative group of, let's say, different stakeholders to be here so that we have certain discussions and we can ground the reason for this choice in the idea that we want to have a representation of different stakeholders. Or if the product particularly impacts certain marginalized groups, we might want to include members of those groups more than their proportion in the community. And in that case, we want to say that what perspectives do they bring, given that they have been particularly adversely impacted here. And this also matters for how we measure diversity. So sometimes we think that, okay, I want diversity in this sense or that sense, but in practice, one thing that happens very often is that people rely on conventional measures of diversity that does not correspond to their intention. And so it's key to make sure that we are clear about the concept and we are using the right measures for measuring that context so that there's no mismatch between our intention and our implementation of diversity initiatives.
And when we're also looking at your research in group dynamics, I know you also have some thoughts on how to actually make diverse groups work, how you can kind of empower them to work together and not, I guess, go against each other or fight each other, to say it.
One thing that we know about diversity is that aside from some of the ethical and political rationales that I mentioned, is that diverse groups can outperform groups that are homogeneous. That is, diversity can actually functionally benefit group decision-making. Now, there are many different pathways about how this might happen. Individuals from different backgrounds might bring different types of perspectives on an issue. Or it might happen because diversity has a positive impact on group communication. In diverse groups, individuals are more likely to raise contestation, to dissent, kind of a prominent opinion. In homogeneous groups, sometimes there's conformity, and these types of dissent does not arise, which means that groups actually perform bad. And sometimes in homogeneous groups, individuals are over-trusting of in-group members, and this again does not happen in diverse groups, individuals pay attention to information with more scrutiny. Now, there are all these different pathways by which diversity can benefit group performance. But in real life, there are many other factors that impact these different pathways. And one of the most important one is what we can broadly call inclusion. These pathways can be beneficial when individuals are interacting in a context where they are respected, they feel included, and to some extent, they are comfortable with disagreeing with each other in a particular way. And particularly, this means individuals from dominant groups, historically dominant groups, need to be really respect the opinion of individuals from marginalized communities. And because otherwise, if individuals are not comfortable with criticisms, with dissent, then diversity can lead to polarization and can lead to further marginalizations of individuals from marginalized communities. So this means very, very broadly that diversity initiative cannot be seen as a kind of a one-time thing that you make your group diverse. It requires a sustained work. It's a sustained process that you need to support people that you bring into your group, not just set them up for failure in a way that they're not respected. So it's really requires sustained effort and empowerment of members from particularly marginalized communities.
And that's all the time we had, Sina. Some really, really good points here. Thank you so much for taking the time to sharing those with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much.